Hello and welcome back, or rather welcome back to me. Okay, so I'm going to just get this out of the way right away. The lighting is abysmal, okay, where I live. It's abysmal. I tried the indoor lighting. I tried closer to a window. This is me. I'm about like 6 feet away from my dining room window. It snowed. There's glare. It's what it is. But you know what? I'm just gonna make do with what I have. Okay, this is it. This is all I could do. And I'm trying to embrace imperfection this year, right? I'm trying to embrace not letting perfect be the enemy of good or done, or you know what I mean, or progress, right? So here we are, and I'm gonna look a little weird from the lighting, but hopefully it's okay. Oh my goodness. So this video is just going to be, as you can see from the title, it's going to be Italian folk magic related. And I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about Italian folk magic because it is, my subject matter. And maybe explore a little bit the difference between Italian folk magic and Italian American folk magic. But it's not just Italian American. I'm very conscious of Italiani all'estero, which means Italians, expat Italians, and their descendants. So I thought I'd start a little series where I talk about, not even a series. I don't even know what I'm going to call this. Okay, maybe it's going to be a one-off. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to drone on and on about this for months. Who knows, right? Let's see where it goes. I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am, and I don't think I really share much about my history, or I know I don't share a lot about my practice, and that's just because I'm wired that way. But I'll try to share a little bit more just to let you in, especially those of you. This is especially geared towards my kindred spirits that are of Italian descent that live elsewhere in the world other than Italy. So I'm going to open up a little bit by talking about the difference between Italian folk magic and, let's say, Italian American folk magic, or Italo-Canadian folk magic, or, oh my God, like the folk magic of Italians in Australia and anywhere else in the world. You know what I mean? It's like Italians didn't exactly just, there's Italians in South America. Like there was like, quite a bit of immigration. And that's what I want to talk about today. Folk magic is the practice of the oppressed. And folk magic is universal. And I've already mentioned this. Folk magic is universal. Every ethnicity has its folk magic, especially where there's been strife, where where people have been oppressed. Folk magic is born of oppression, of necessity. It is when there's no other recourse. People have resorted to witchcraft. The softer term being folk magic. So this is going to be all over the place. So if you're one of those people that has a problem with me, like not having notes and talking all over the place, this is not the video for you. Okay, so just that I put that out there. Not that I need to do disclaimers because I really don't give a shit. But it's, if you're going to critique and tell me that I should take notes, well, this information is free. I'm offering this information for free. So, make do. All right. Oh my God, I'm already salty. I didn't even start yet. Okay, so Folk magic being the magic of the oppressed. So let's start with, I'm only going to talk about Italian folk magic, obviously, because that is what I know. It's what I know best. It's what I practice. It's what I've researched. It's what I grew up in. It's where I come from. Perhaps a little bit of context would help. I am first generation born in America. I was born in the United States, and I was raised both in America, in the Northeast, in New England, and in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And so, and my cultural experience is such that my parents were both immigrants. They're gone. Like, my parents are deceased. As a matter of fact, so are all. That entire generation is gone in my family. So that makes me now the next generation coming up, or the half step, or however you want to look at it. Doesn't matter. When I speak of Italian folk magic, when I wrote about Italian folk magic in my book, I wrote about the Italian folk magic of immigrants, people displaced, people. This is the generation of my parents that grew up during World War II, where they suffered the trauma of a world war, occupation. My mother and her brother, my uncle, were orphaned during World War II and ended up in an orphanage, and God knows what went on there. My father was a kid during World War II, and then was sent to a fucking coal mine. At 17 years old, he's working in a coal mine. And then, life was dire. Life was dire in Italy post World War II. So the dream was to get on a freaking boat and cross the Atlantic, to emigrate to somewhere better, to have more opportunities. Well, it's very difficult, I would imagine. See, because for me it's not difficult. I grew up with these people. These people taught me everything I know. These people told their stories, and I was very fortunate to have a family of storytellers. I've learned from talking to other people, getting to know other people, and even within my own family, that storytelling is not something everybody does, especially when the stories are harsh and the stories are horrific. I don't believe that my parents and my aunts and uncles of that generation told us all the stories. I don't think we were told all of the horrific. And, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm older. I could fill in the blanks. And it's hard. It's hard to fathom. So imagine, like in my dad's case, right? You're 19 years old and you pack a suitcase with whatever worldly belongings you have, which is not much, and a couple of bucks in your pocket if you have any, and you get on a fucking steamship to cross the Atlantic in winter. Takes 3.5 weeks, maybe 4, to reach Canada, which is where he was headed. This is only one story I can tell. There's so, like, for every adult that raised me, there's an immigration story. So there's the trauma of war. There's the trauma of leaving everything you know for a big black hole of unknown. Not speaking the language of where you're landing. Not having family at the other end, because see, there's a difference. My parents were the generation right after the war that immigrated, and they were the first ones. They were the second wave, because the first wave was after World War One, and like in the 1900s and stuff like that, in the early 1900s, and then after World War One. But my parents were, my dad, well, I'll focus on my dad, because that's the story I started telling. So he doesn't know where the fuck he's going. He doesn't know what he's going to find. The hope is, and and it's also that youthful, that optimism of youth, seeker of fortune. The American dream, people. American dream. Because you know what? My dad knew about the American dream growing up in Tocco da Casauria in Italy, in Abruzzo. But life is harsh. Life is harsh. And these people experience traumas. They experienced traumas, and they came to a place that was hostile towards them. Because let me tell you something, okay? And I'm going to bring this up when I talk a little bit more about Italian American folk magic. But I'm of the generation where it wasn't cool to be Italian. It certainly wasn't cool to be Italian when my dad immigrated, okay? Wasn't cool at all. They were seen as outsiders and as less than. They were given all the shit jobs. And they did them. Italians built America because they were all stonemasons, bricklayers. Whether they were by trade or not, they were when they got here. So, why am I telling you all this? These are people that, when they came here, they left what they knew, and they came to pretty much nothing. And they had nothing. And all they had was their will and their drive to survive and to better themselves, to better their lot in life. Many came over to work. Many men came over to work to send money back home to Italy. One of my favorite Neapolitan folk songs, Lacrime Napoletana, tells that story. It's very poignant and it's very heartbreaking. And even more so for me, because I witnessed it. I was young. I was a kid. I'm just growing up, just doing my thing. But I witnessed it. And it stuck with me. How? How can you compare the folk magic, for instance, of Italians who never left Italy? Like right now, there's like it's the flavor of the month, whatever's going on or whatever. There's a lot of reconstructionism going on, reconstructionist English people. I speak many languages, and it's okay. I fumble in all of them like this. It's bad. It's really bad, but it's okay. There's a lot of reconstructionist folk magic going on, a lot of witchcraft, and I'm just talking about this kind of stuff because this is my subject matter, right? You can't compare what's going on in Italy. You can't be someone who grew up in America and want to practice what they're practicing in Italy. Or like, why would it doesn't even relate to your experience. You are the descendants of people who showed tremendous courage and grit and left it all. Everything they knew. Family, friends, spouses, pets, you name it, to come and make something of themselves. The promise of something better. And they ate a lot of shit. They ate a lot of shit. And if your grandparents didn't tell you those stories, it's because they're hard. And because our Italian immigrant ancestors, also carried shame. Because not only did they leave everything that they knew, they were even treated like pariahs when they returned to visit. They finally earn enough money to go back to visit Italy, and everyone's got a handout. Everyone has a handout. I saw it in my own family. When my father would go back to Italy, everybody had a handout. Well, at least his relatives did. His siblings and his mom. And they all had some kind of like chip on their shoulder. Well, you left. So if he asked any questions or if he just wanted to know what was going on with them, well, what do you care? You left. Rock in a hard place, right? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So what do you think happens when these young people who left everything they knew to seek fortune, to seek a better life, they leave everything behind. They think they're going to go home to this big reunion and be treated like, oh my God, we're so happy to see you. And it's not always the case. What do you think happens to someone who is so young and impressionable and goes through that trauma of immigrating to somewhere where they don't know the language? They're treated like garbage, literally. Not only by the people they meet here, okay? Not only by the non-Italians. They are treated like garbage by their own people. They find a job with someone who's their paisan who immigrated, let's say, 15 years prior, and they have a business or whatever, and they're being exploited by their own people, by their own paisani, by their own uncles and aunts. Why am I telling you all this? Why am I giving you this whole lecture on, and it's not even, this is like just surface, just to give you an idea of what the immigrant experience is. And you don't have to take it from me. There's like great minds who have written, academics who have written about the Italian American experience, the Italian immigrant experience, whether it's in America, Canada, Australia, wherever the hell they went, Germany. It's because that's what informs their practice. It's what informs their spiritual practice. When Italians arrived, the Italian immigrants arrived, and they went to church. The Catholic churches were German Catholic churches. They were Irish Catholic churches. Let me tell you, it wasn't as folk as they were used to in the town, village, whatever they're from. It wasn't home. Wasn't at all like home. They had to adapt. Everything had to be adapted. Recipes, traditional recipes, had to be adapted with what they could find in North America or wherever else they immigrated to. I'll give an example. I grew up with this a lot. People would say, "Oh, well, you know, like the classic example is the spaghetti and meatballs. You're Italian, you grew up Italian, whether it was your first, like me, first generation born in America, second, third, whatever. You grew up with spaghetti and meatballs because you grew up in Connecticut, you grew up in New Jersey, you grew up in Montreal, whatever. That doesn't exist in Italy. Does that make it any more real to you in terms of a comfort food that your mom made for you? Italian, you know, spaghetti and meatballs doesn't exist there. That is spaghetti and meatballs is an example of how Italians adapted with what they could get. All they could afford was the chopped meat or the ground beef, depending on where you're from. And they had to stretch it to feed everybody, because one thing about Italian American culture, or Italiani all'estero, specifically Italians who immigrated, because you know what, there is a distinct difference between the people who immigrated and the people who stayed in Italy. It's not even the same culture. There's some similarity, but if you are of Italian descent, you will have more in common with me than you would with someone in Italy. You would have more in common, if you live in America, you would have more in common with someone who is of Italian descent, or even an Italian immigrant, like someone's nonna or whatever, that's in Melbourne, Australia, than you would with someone in Rome. So why would you want to reconnect, or why would you want to connect with something that your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors are disconnected from? Spiritual practice, folk magic, bloom where you're planted. It begins with you. If you're searching, you want to connect to your roots. It doesn't begin in Italy. It doesn't begin with, trying to figure out where your people are from and stuff like that. If you can, that's great and that's wonderful. And it does add a whole layer. But if you really want to know what you come from, read Italian American literature, Italian Canadian literature, Italian Australian literature, Italian of the Italian literature of the immigrant experience. Because that's where you come. If you're watching me, that's where you come from. You come from, your ancestors had grit. Your ancestors ate shit. Oh my God, it's sad that it even rhymes. That's what you have to look to. So if you're looking to connect with your Italian roots, connect with your Italian roots where you are. Not some country in Europe that maybe your grandparents or your great-grandparents left 150 years ago. That place doesn't even exist anymore. The Italy my parents left doesn't exist. The Italy I visited in my childhood doesn't exist. But you exist. You exist. And your magic is part your ancestry, part the culture you're in, and it's 100% your experience. Folk magic isn't tangible. Our practice, folk magic is not tangible. Folk magic is experiential and is extremely individual. You can't just read about folk magic. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to practice folk magic. And what do you need? It doesn't matter if you're watching me and you don't speak Italian at all. So what? So what? You need something translated? Text me. I have, what I'm trying to say, if you have an interest in Italian folk magic, this is what you need to know. 1, it's not a closed practice. It's not. And don't believe anyone who tells you that they are the authority on Italian folk magic, including me. Okay? Even though I am. At least I am for my little niche. You don't need a teacher. You don't need anything. Because your ancestors didn't have anything. They had nothing. Look at how you live. And imagine that your ancestors didn't have any of that at all. And look at what their progeny and their descendants have accomplished. The pillars of Italian folk magic: cleansing, blessing, protecting, and when necessary, defending. You can pretty much start doing that wherever you are. Does it make you, do you feel connected to your heritage because you order a pizza on Fridays? That's wonderful. That's absolutely amazing. If you can feel a connection to your ancestors ordering pizza on Friday, don't give that up. Don't let somebody tell you that that's not it. That's not the right way. If you don't feel like venerating your ancestors, I think that's absolutely bullshit. See, the problem with me personally is that I knew my ancestors. I was raised by them, and they were flawed. See, when you don't know your ancestors, it's easy to talk about, to hype it all up and say, ooh, I venerate my ancestors. I have a picture of my grandfather. My grandfather used to beat my grandmother. I'm not going to have a picture of him on my wall, venerating him. He used to beat her to the point where then she would threaten to kill herself in front of her children. Why would I venerate him? Now, that's a really well, no, I was about to say that's like an exaggerated example, but it's not. Because these were harsh times. And these were hard people. So, let me bring it back. Because I don't even know what the title of this video now, but I'm trying to give you a little tour of what goes on inside my head when I see things or I hear things, and when I hit the witch scene in the 90s on the internet, I was out there, people. I was defending my heritage, my practice, my culture. Oh my God. When I saw anything that deviated from what I was raised in, I right away condemned it as cultural violence. I was out there, people. I was very vocal. And I made a lot of people that didn't like me. I don't want to say enemies because I don't think they gave a shit about me either way. You know what I mean? But I did, I wouldn't say enemies, but a lot of people disliked me, but I also made a lot of friends and a lot of allies. And now that just made me a little bit sad because many of them are gone now. Both friends and foes. But look, I know it's a ramble. If you can take anything from what I'm talking about today, it's this. Start with where you are. Bloom where you're planted. If you are drawn to Italian folk magic, to Italian witchcraft, because another thing too is, when people, I'm criticized a lot because I mix folk magic with witchcraft. I'm sorry, it's witchcraft. If it isn't Catholicism, it's witchcraft, period. It doesn't matter what veneer, what kind of shiny veneer you want to put on it. You could call it saint magic, it's witchcraft. Because the other camp, the devout Catholic camp, looks at us and we're heathens. So let's get that out of the way. Folk magic, magia popolare, which is the magic of the people, of the populace. Stregoneria, it's all the same thing. It's all gray. There's no good. There's no clean side of the street when it comes to this. There's no, I'm a light worker. I only work in the light. That's bullshit. If you are in any capacity, having any kind of intercession with spirits, you've already crossed the threshold, my dear. You are. Once you commit your first act of witchcraft, you can't come back from that. Because the spirit world knows who you are. They know you. You've identified yourself. So just do it. If you don't know where to start, just start with something that means something to you. Maybe when you order your pizza on Fridays to celebrate your Italian heritage, maybe you put on a little music. Maybe you put on a little Bon Jovi. He's Italian American. Little Lady Gaga. Maybe you watch a movie with Bradley Cooper. Did you know that Bradley Cooper's Abruzzese? You heard it here first. And Bradley Cooper, if you're watching, because of course I imagine Bradley Cooper is watching my videos, send me a DM. I will send you a copy of my book. I wanted to point out just the absurdity of it all. There's no one can tell you what's the right way or the wrong way for you to connect to your heritage. No one can tell you what's the right way or wrong way for you to connect to spirit, to God, the Creator, all that is. The source, whatever you call it, the universe. No one can tell you what's right for you. At the end of the day, the connection has to be inside you. Just like with magic. You could read all the books by all those witch experts, present company included. You could read all the books. You can take all the courses. The proof is in your first foray into actually practicing. Your first, and it's not all about spell casting and ritual. You know, like some people, it's not even their thing, right? Sometimes, you know, just watering your plants, excuse me, is a ritual. Taking care of your pets, being a steward of the land that you live on. Bloom where you're planted. Bloom where you're planted. Connect to your heritage however you see fit. If your idea, if you're Italian American, like, you know, for me, I would think, like, you know, for me it would be going to Little Italy during Italian Heritage Month or something like that, or like, you know, or like in June, it's in Canada. June is, you know, Italo-Canadian or Italian Canadian Heritage Month, right? So if for me, reconnecting with my culture is going to a festival where I'm eating like freaking funnel cake and sausage with peppers from a street vendor, well, there's music in the background. I don't give a shit about what, let's say, someone in Rome would think of that. Oh, so quaint. I wouldn't feel connected. I didn't feel connected. Let's say, going to celebrate in Rome when my people were from Abruzzo and Naples, and at least the ones that raised me. My mom was from the part northeastern Italy that borders with Slovenia, so that's a completely other side of me that I haven't even explored publicly. So this ramble was to say, if you feel drawn to practice Italian folk magic, please do. Wherever you are, whether or not you're Italian or not, it doesn't matter. Because just like the God, the creator, whatever, do you think that he or she or it or them or whatever give a shit about what organized religions we belong to? Even less what we are ethnically. I find it very interesting because, see, I can have an affinity or an appreciation for a culture that I am not raised in. I would never walk around and say that I'm of that culture, but I certainly would share my love and appreciation for it and want to learn more about the history and the food and the culture and their traditions. So, I don't know. I'm just going to upload this video because I hope that somewhere in this ramble I said something that was helpful to someone. Wherever you are, however tenuous you're told your connection to Italian culture is, or ethnicity, or whatever, whether you are a descendant or not, but specifically if you are one of the descendants of Italiani all'estero, where you are the descendant of immigrants, be proud. Be proud, because they were a tough bunch. And the ones post-World War II were the last ones. So I'm going to stop this video here because I'm still not quite sure if I said what I had to say. wherever you are in the world, I'm wishing you all a beautiful day. And you're my people. Take care.